They invited the janitor to the Billionaire's luxury gala as a joke, expecting laughter. But when she walked into the hall dressed like royalty, the entire room fell silent. And what she revealed next changed the life of the billionaire forever. Stay tuned because you are about to watch a beautiful story and find out what happened next. Hello family, welcome to Tales by King. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. Every morning before the sun rose, Lena Brooks walked through the quiet streets of the city, carrying her small black bag and a bottle of water. The air was usually cold at that hour, and only a few buses moved along the empty roads. While many people were still sleeping comfortably in their homes, Lena was already on her way to work. She worked as a janitor at Carter Holdings Tower, one of the tallest and most beautiful office buildings in the city. The building had shining glass walls, marble floors, and bright lights that never seemed to turn off. Important businessmen, lawyers, and wealthy investors walked in and out every day, speaking confidently on their phones and discussing million-dollar deals. But before any of them arrived, Lena was always there, quietly sweeping the floors, wiping the glass doors, and making sure the building looked perfect before the first employee stepped inside. Lena was a young woman in her late 20s, calm and hardworking. She rarely complained, even when the work was heavy. She believed in something simple her late mother had once told her. No work is small. The way you do it makes it great. Still, life had not been easy for her. After losing her parents years ago, Lena had been forced to stop her university education and take different small jobs just to survive. Cleaning offices was not the life she had once dreamed about, but she never allowed sadness to change her kind heart. She greeted the security guards politely every morning and often helped older workers carry heavy supplies. Some employees noticed her kindness, but many others barely saw her at all. A few even dropped trash carelessly, expecting her to clean it without saying a word. Lena simply smiled quietly and continued her work. One particular morning, as sunlight slowly entered the glass lobby, Lena was polishing the large reception desk when a group of young executives walked in, laughing loudly. They were discussing the upcoming elite charity gala, the biggest social event hosted every year by the company's owner, billionaire Daniel Carter. Everyone important will be there this year, one of them said proudly. I heard famous investors and celebrities are already confirming. Another laughed and replied, you need the perfect partner to attend that kind of event. It's not a place for ordinary people. They walked past Lena without even lowering their voices, as if she were invisible. A few minutes later, a black luxury car stopped outside the building. Security guards immediately straightened their posture. Daniel Carter had arrived. He stepped out wearing a perfectly tailored suit, his expression serious yet confident. Employees greeted him respectfully as he entered. Daniel was known as one of the youngest billionaires in the country, smart, hardworking, and extremely successful. However, many also believed he had grown too used to power and rarely noticed the small people around him. As Daniel walked through the lobby, he briefly glanced around. For a second, his eyes passed over Lena as she cleaned the marble floor, but he did not truly see her. To him, she was simply part of the background, like the furniture or the walls. Later that afternoon, Daniel sat in the executive meeting room discussing preparations for the gala with his senior staff. The atmosphere was relaxed, and some of the younger executives began making light jokes about the event. Sir, one of them said playfully, this year you should surprise everyone. Invite someone completely unexpected. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Unexpected? Yes, another laughed. Someone no one would ever imagine seeing at a high society gala. Daniel leaned back in his chair, thinking for a moment. His eyes moved through the glass wall of the meeting room toward the hallway outside. At that exact moment, Lena was pushing her cleaning cart quietly past the door. A careless smile appeared on Daniel's face. What about the janitor? He said jokingly. The room exploded with laughter. It would be hilarious, someone added. Imagine the reaction. Daniel chuckled lightly. Fine. Send her an invitation. Let's see what happens. To him, it was nothing serious, just a small joke to entertain his executives. But outside that room, life continued normally. Lena finished her evening duties, returned her cleaning supplies, and prepared to leave for the bus stop, unaware that a decision had just been made that would soon change her life completely. Later that night, as she reached her small apartment and was about to open the door, the building manager called her. Lena, "This envelope came for you from Carter Holdings," he said. Surprised, she thanked him and slowly opened the golden envelope under the hallway light. Her eyes widened as she read the words. "You are formally invited to attend the Carter Elite Charity Gala." For several seconds, Lena simply stood there in silence, unsure whether she should feel honored, confused, or worried. Was it a mistake, or something else entirely? Holding the invitation carefully in her hands, Lena whispered softly to herself, "Why would they invite me?" Slowly, she entered her small apartment. The room was simple but neat, a small bed by the window, a wooden table, and a bookshelf filled with a few old textbooks she had never found the courage to throw away. She placed the envelope carefully on the table and sat down, staring at it for several minutes. Part of her felt excited. Another part felt uncomfortable. She could not ignore the possibility that the invitation might have been sent as a joke. After all, she had seen how some employees laughed at workers like her. Just as she was thinking deeply, her phone rang. It was Mrs. Helen, an elderly neighbor who had always treated Lena like a daughter. "Lena, are you home?" "I just baked some bread," Helen said warmly. "Yes, Mama Helen. Please come in," Lena replied softly. A few minutes later, the elderly woman entered the apartment, carrying a small basket. She immediately noticed the golden envelope on the table. "What is this?" she asked. Lena hesitated, then handed it to her. Helen adjusted her glasses and read the invitation slowly. Her eyes widened with surprise. "A gala? From Carter Holdings." Lena nodded. "I don't understand it. Maybe they sent it by mistake. Or maybe someone is trying to make fun of me." Helen looked at her carefully and shook her head. "Listen to me, Lena," she said gently. "Whether it was sent as a joke or not, what matters is how you respond. You cannot control how people see you, but you can control how you carry yourself." Lena remained silent, thinking about those words. That night, after Helen left, Lena opened an old wooden box she kept under her bed. Inside were small memories from her past, family photographs, school certificates, and a few personal items her parents had left for her. At the bottom of the box was a carefully wrapped cloth. She unfolded it slowly and revealed a beautiful deep blue gown. It had belonged to her mother, who had once worn it at a formal event many years ago. Her mother had always told her, "One day, you will wear this when the right moment comes." Lena ran her fingers gently over the soft fabric. Many years had passed since she had even thought about wearing something so elegant. Life had forced her to focus only on survival, leaving no space for dreams. She stood in front of the mirror and held the gown against her body. For a moment, she did not see a janitor standing in a small apartment. She saw a confident woman who had simply been waiting for her time. Still, doubt returned. "What if people laugh?" she whispered to herself. Then she remembered something else her mother had once told her. Dignity does not come from clothes or money. It comes from how you stand, how you speak, and how you treat others. Lena took a deep breath. The next day after work, she visited Helen, who was once a professional tailor. Helen carefully adjusted the gown, making sure it fit perfectly. "You are not going there to impress them," Helen said gently while sewing the final thread. "You are going there to remind yourself that your value does not depend on anyone's opinion." Lena smiled softly. "Thank you, Mama Helen." As she returned home that evening, the city lights glowed brightly along the streets. For the first time in many years, Lena felt something she had almost forgotten, quiet confidence. She carefully placed the gown near her bed and looked at the invitation again. This time, her hands were steady. No matter the reason behind the invitation, she had made her decision. She was going to attend the gala, and she was going to walk in with her head held high. The day of the gala finally arrived. From morning, Lena's stomach felt tight, like a small knot had formed inside her. Even while she worked at Carter Holdings, her mind kept drifting back to the invitation at home. She cleaned the glass doors, arranged the waiting area, and wiped the elevator buttons like she always did, but everything felt different. It was not because the work had changed. It was because she was changing. As the afternoon sun began to fade, the building slowly grew quieter. Most employees left early to prepare for the event. Lena finished her last task, signed out, and walked out of the tower with her small bag. Outside, the air was cool and calm. Lena took the bus home, sitting near the window. She watched the city lights begin to glow as evening approached. People on the street looked busy and excited, like something special was in the air. When she reached her apartment, she washed her face carefully, then took a long bath, letting the warm water calm her nerves. Afterward, She stood in front of her mirror and stared at herself. For a few seconds, she did not move. Then she whispered, "I will go with dignity." She opened her wardrobe and brought out the deep blue gown Helen had fixed. The dress looked simple but powerful, elegant without trying too hard. Lena put it on slowly, almost like she was stepping into a new part of her life. She brushed her hair neatly and pinned it behind her ears. She wore small earrings Helen had given her years ago and a simple bracelet that belonged to her mother. She applied light makeup, just enough to brighten her face, not enough to hide who she was. When she finished, she looked into the mirror again. Her eyes looked different, not proud in a rude way, just calm, strong, ready. A car horn sounded outside. Lena walked to the window and saw a clean black taxi waiting. Helen had secretly paid for it, not wanting Lena to struggle with buses on such a night. Lena's throat tightened with emotion. She picked up her small purse, held the invitation in her hand for a moment, then walked out. The Carter Elite Charity Gala was held at a luxury hotel downtown. The building looked like a palace, covered in golden lights and flowers. Outside, cameras flashed, and wealthy guests stepped out of expensive cars, smiling for pictures. Lena paid the driver, then stood for a moment near the entrance. She could hear laughter, music, and voices from inside. Her heart beat fast. But she remembered Helen's words. "Hold your head high." So she did. Lena stepped forward and walked toward the red carpet. A few people glanced at her and slowed down, trying to place her face. Others stared openly, surprised by her quiet confidence. At the entrance, a security guard politely asked, "Invitation, ma'am?" Lena handed it over calmly. The guard checked the list, then his eyes widened slightly. He quickly returned it with respect. "Welcome, Ms. Brooks." Lena nodded gently and walked inside. The grand hall was filled with soft golden lights, expensive perfume, and the sound of live music. Waiters moved around with trays of drinks. Women wore sparkling gowns, and men wore suits that looked like they cost more than Lena's yearly rent. In a corner of the hall, Daniel Carter stood with several investors and executives. He looked sharp in a dark suit, holding a drink while speaking confidently. He was smiling, the kind of smile that said he owned the room. "Tonight will be a big success," one investor said. Daniel nodded. "It always is." Behind him, some of the younger executives laughed together. "Did you send the invitation?" one whispered. "Yes," another replied, grinning. "I can't wait to see if she actually comes." Daniel chuckled quietly. In his mind, it was still just harmless entertainment. He did not know the moment he was about to witness would stay in his memory forever. Suddenly, the large double doors at the entrance opened. A cool breeze from outside slipped in, and for a second, the music seemed to soften. Then she walked in. Lena stepped into the hall with slow, steady confidence. The deep blue gown flowed softly as she moved. The light caught her skin, making it glow warmly. Her shoulders were straight. Her face was calm. Her eyes were focused, not looking for attention, but not hiding either. At first, people simply stared. Then whispers started. "Who is she? She looks familiar. Is she someone important? Wait, isn't that?" The whispers grew louder. Then something strange happened. The hall began to fall silent. Even the people who were laughing a second ago stopped. A few guests turned fully in their seats. Some held their drinks in midair, frozen like statues. It was as if the room itself had paused. Daniel was still talking when he noticed the sudden change. He stopped mid-sentence and followed everyone's eyes toward the entrance. And then he saw her. His smile disappeared instantly. His eyes widened. His body stiffened. For a moment, he could not breathe properly. Because the woman walking in was not a stranger. It was the janitor from his office tower. It was Lena Brooks. But the Lena he knew, the quiet woman pushing a cleaning cart, did not exist in this moment. This Lena looked like royalty. Daniel's mouth opened slightly, shocked. His mind struggled to understand what he was seeing. One of the executives beside him whispered in disbelief. That's her." Another murmured. How does she look like that?" Lena walked forward without rushing, her heels clicking gently on the shiny floor. She did not smile too much. She did not look afraid. She looked like she belonged. As she passed a group of wealthy women, they fell silent and watched her. A man near the front stepped aside quickly, making space for her like she was an honored guest. And as Lena walked deeper into the hall, the silence grew heavier. Because in that moment, everyone understood something. They had judged her wrongly. And now, they did not know what she would do next. Lena stopped near the center of the hall and lifted her eyes calmly. Her gaze moved across the room. Then, for the first time that night, her eyes met Daniel's. And Daniel felt something he had not felt in a long time. Fear mixed with shame. Because he suddenly realized that his joke had opened a door. And once opened, he could not close it again. Lena took one more step forward, slow and confident. And the host's microphone crackled softly, as if someone was about to make an announcement. Everyone waited, even Daniel, because something was about to happen. Something no one had planned. And whatever it was, it would change the night forever. The host cleared his throat and forced a cheerful voice. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "thank you for attending the Carter Elite Charity Gala. Tonight, we celebrate generosity, leadership, and the future we can build together." The crowd gave a small polite clap, but the energy was still strange. The host continued, "We have special guests tonight, investors, partners, community leaders, and people who have made a difference in silent ways." When he said silent ways, some people shifted uncomfortably, as if that phrase touched something they did not want to think about. Daniel's executive team stood close to him, whispering. "Sir, do you think she knows?" one of them murmured. Daniel did not answer. His throat felt dry. He could only watch Lena. The host looked down at his card again and smiled. "And now, we will begin with introductions and networking. Please enjoy the evening." He stepped away from the microphone, but the room still did not return to normal. Instead, the whispers started again, low, curious, and confused. Who is she really? She can't just be a janitor. Look at the way people are moving for her. Maybe she's connected to someone important. Lena began walking slowly toward the refreshment area. A waiter offered her a drink, but she politely refused with a gentle smile. As she moved, people watched her as if she were a mystery they were desperate to solve. Then a wealthy woman in a diamond necklace stepped forward. Her voice was polite, but there was pride inside it. "Good evening," the woman said. "I'm Vivian Hale. I don't believe we've met. May I ask who you are?" Several people around them leaned slightly closer, pretending they weren't listening. But Lena noticed. She understood that the room had turned into one big ear. Lena returned the woman's greeting with calm respect. "My name is Lena Brooks," she said simply. Vivian smiled tightly. "Brooks, interesting. Are you here with someone? A guest of Mr. Carter?" Lena's eyes remained steady. "I was invited," she replied. That answer made the people nearby exchange looks. Vivian laughed softly, but it did not sound friendly. "Invited? By who?" Lena did not raise her voice. She did not show anger. She only said the truth. "By Mr. Daniel Carter." The group gasped quietly. Vivian's smile dropped for half a second before she forced it back. At that moment, Daniel could not stay where he was anymore. He walked toward Lena, his steps slow, as if each one carried weight. The crowd opened space for him, watching closely. When he reached her, he tried to speak calmly. "Lena," he started. Hearing her name from his mouth made the room feel even more unreal. Some executives almost choked on their drinks. Lena turned to him fully. She did not bow. She did not shrink. She looked at him like an equal human being. Daniel swallowed hard. "I didn't expect you to come," he admitted. Lena's lips curved into a small, calm smile. "Most people don't expect much from those they refuse to see," she said gently. Her words were quiet, but they hit like a slap. Daniel's face tightened. His eyes flickered, as if her sentence had opened a painful memory inside him. Lena continued, still respectful. "I don't blame you for not knowing my story, but I will not allow anyone to treat me as a joke." The silence grew deeper. Even the musicians in the corner stopped playing for a moment, unsure. Daniel stood there, completely exposed. Not because Lena was shouting, but because she was telling the truth without fear. One of the investors whispered, "Wow." Vivian, embarrassed, tried to save herself. "This is a charity event. Everyone should feel welcome," she said, but her voice sounded weak now. Lena nodded politely. "Yes, everyone." Then Lena did something unexpected. She turned away from Daniel and walked toward the stage. People stared as she moved forward. A few men even stepped aside quickly to let her pass, as if they suddenly understood that something bigger was happening. One of the staff tried to stop her gently. "Ma'am, the program." Lena raised her hand slightly, not rude, just firm. "Please allow me." The staff hesitated, then stepped back. Lena climbed the small stairs to the stage and stood near the microphone. The host looked panicked. "Ma'am, are you part of the speakers?" Lena looked at him calmly. I am tonight. Before he could respond, Lena picked up the microphone. A strong silence covered the hall like a blanket. Daniel took one step forward, shocked. What is she doing? Someone whispered. Lena's voice was soft but clear. Good evening, she began. My name is Lena Brooks. Many of you know this building, this company, and this event as symbols of wealth. She paused and looked around the room. But tonight, I want to remind us that wealth is not the same as worth. Some people shifted in their seats. A few frowned. Others looked curious. Lena continued. I work as a janitor at Carter Holdings. I clean the floors you walk on. I wipe the tables you place your laptops on. I open the lobby before most of you wake up. A wave of shock moved through the crowd. A wealthy man whispered, She really is the janitor. Lena nodded slowly, as if answering the whisper. Yes, I am. She took a breath. But I am also a woman who has been quietly helping children in my community. Daniel's eyes widened. Lena lifted a small folder she had carried inside her purse. She opened it and held up a few papers. For the past 3 years, she said, I have been using my small salary to buy books, pay school fees for children who are about to drop out, and support evening lessons for young girls who want a better future. The room became heavy with emotion. Lena's voice remained steady, but her eyes shone slightly, as if she was holding back tears, not of pain but of strength. I have done it quietly because I did not need applause. I only needed those children to have a chance. She looked around the hall again. I know what it feels like to lose everything. I know what it feels like to be treated like you are nothing. But I also know something else. She paused. Kindness and dignity can build a life again, even from nothing. For a moment, no one clapped. Not because they didn't want to, but because they were stunned. Then slowly, one person began to clap. Then another. Then many. The applause grew louder and louder until the entire hall was clapping. Even Vivian's hands moved, though her face was tight with embarrassment. Daniel stood frozen, his chest rising and falling. His eyes looked wet, though he tried to hide it. Because in that moment, the whole world had seen what he had ignored every day. And then Lena said something that made the applause soften again. I was invited tonight, Lena continued, and I believe the invitation may have started as a joke. I felt it in my spirit. Some people gasped. Daniel's face turned pale. Lena did not insult him. She did not expose him harshly. She simply spoke the truth like a clean mirror. But I came anyway, she said, because I refused to be ashamed of honest work. And I refused to allow any human being to be treated as less because of what they do to survive. The hall was so quiet again that you could hear the soft hum of the lights. Lena looked straight toward Daniel. Her next words were gentle, but powerful. Mr. Carter, thank you for inviting me. Daniel's mouth opened slightly. Lena added, Tonight, I also want to invite you, and everyone here, to support a scholarship fund for hardworking children from low-income homes. She turned the folder slightly. This is my plan. I have started small, but I cannot do it alone. If this room is truly filled with leaders, then let us lead with our hearts too. The host leaned closer, whispering, Is this approved? Lena answered into the microphone, calm and fearless. Goodness does not need permission. The crowd murmured again, but this time it was not mockery. It was respect. And Daniel realized, with a deep, painful clarity, that Lena was not just taking a moment. She was taking her place. The host slowly stepped forward and said into his own microphone, his voice unsure but sincere, Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have witnessed something truly special tonight. He looked at Daniel. All donations made in the next 10 minutes will be matched by Carter Holdings, if Mr. Carter agrees. All eyes turned to Daniel. The hall went silent again. Daniel's hands clenched at his sides. His face looked like a man fighting with himself. Then he took a slow step forward. And in a voice that surprised even him, he said, I agree. A loud cheer rose. But Lena's expression did not change into celebration. She only nodded once, as if she expected this moment. Daniel looked up at her, his eyes full of something new. Not pride, not control, but humility. And as Lena stepped down from the stage, the crowd parted for her again, not out of confusion this time, but out of respect. Yet inside Daniel's mind, one thought kept repeating. I invited her as a joke, but she just turned my entire world upside down. And the night was not even over, because Lena still had one more surprise. Something hidden in her story. Something that would make Daniel realize that what he thought was small was actually powerful. And when he finally discovered it, He would never be the same again. Guests began approaching Lena, one after another. Some thanked her for her speech. Others asked how they could support the scholarship program. Several investors even promised to donate before the night ended. Lena spoke to each person politely, never acting proud or superior. She smiled gently, answered their questions, and encouraged them to help not only with money, but also with mentorship for young students who needed guidance. Across the hall, Daniel watched quietly. One of his senior executives stepped closer to him. "Sir, she has changed the entire event," he whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, she has." After a few minutes, Daniel walked toward Lena. The crowd noticed and stepped aside, creating space for him. When he reached her, he stood silently for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Lena," he said at last, his voice calm but serious. "May I speak with you privately?" Lena looked at him and nodded. They walked toward a quieter corner of the hall, near a large window overlooking the city lights. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, Daniel exhaled slowly. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I invited you tonight for the wrong reason. At the time, I thought it was harmless. But I now understand that it was careless and disrespectful." Lena listened quietly. Daniel continued, "What you did tonight reminded me of something I had forgotten. That success means nothing if you cannot see the people standing right in front of you." Lena's expression softened slightly. "I did not come tonight to embarrass you," she said gently. "I came because I refused to be ashamed of my work. Every honest job deserves respect." Daniel nodded. "You are right." He paused, then added, "And I would like to make something right." He turned slightly and called one of his assistants, whispering a few instructions. Within minutes, the host returned to the stage and tapped the microphone again. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "Mr. Daniel Carter would like to make a special announcement." The room quieted once more. Daniel stepped onto the stage, something he had done many times before, but tonight felt different. His voice carried not the confidence of a billionaire showing power, but the honesty of a man speaking from his heart. "Tonight," he began, "I witnessed something that changed the way I see my own company, my own leadership, and myself." He looked toward Lena. Ms. Lena Brooks reminded all of us that dignity does not come from titles, wealth, or position. It comes from character. Several guests nodded quietly. Daniel continued, "Because of that, Carter Holdings will officially launch a new program called the Employee Growth and Education Initiative. Every worker in this company, from executives to cleaning staff, will have access to education sponsorship, leadership training, and career development opportunities." A wave of surprised murmurs filled the hall. "And," Daniel added, "the scholarship program Ms. Brooks started will now be fully supported by Carter Holdings as a permanent community foundation." This time, the applause rose immediately, louder than before. Daniel then said something no one expected. "I would also like to invite Ms. Lena Brooks to serve as Director of Community Development for this new foundation, if she chooses to accept." All eyes turned to Lena again. She stood still for a moment, clearly surprised. She had not expected such a public offer. Slowly, she walked toward the stage as the crowd watched in silence. When she reached Daniel, he handed her the microphone. Lena looked at the audience, then at Daniel. "I accept," she said calmly, "but only on one condition." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And what is that?" Lena smiled gently. "That every worker in this company, no matter their position, will be treated with respect, starting today." Daniel nodded without hesitation. "Agreed." The hall erupted into applause once more. Later that night, as the gala came to an end, guests began leaving with smiles and thoughtful expressions. Many were still discussing Lena's speech, Daniel's announcement, and how the evening had turned into something far more meaningful than anyone expected. Outside the hotel, the night air was cool and peaceful. Lena stepped onto the front steps and looked at the glowing city lights. For years, she had walked through life quietly, often unseen. But tonight, she had not become important because of a dress or a stage. She had simply allowed the world to see who she had always been. Daniel stepped outside and stood beside her. "Thank you," he said softly. Lena looked at him. "For what?" "For reminding me that leadership begins with seeing people," he replied. Lena smiled gently. "Sometimes people do not need a miracle. They only need someone willing to see their worth." They stood quietly for a moment, watching the cars move along the distant streets. And in that peaceful silence, both of them understood something powerful. A joke had started the evening, but respect had ended it. And from that night forward, the story of the janitor who walked into a gala like royalty would be told again and again, not as a story about wealth or power, but as a reminder that true greatness begins the moment we choose to treat every human being with dignity. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you find this story worth watching. If you do, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories, like, comment, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thanks for watching.